السلام عليكم. والصلاة والسلام على رسولنا محمد سيدنا الأولين والآخرين مدد يا رسول الله عليه الصلاة والسلام مدد يا شيخ دستور ولا شاء الله فاز حسن شيخ محمد أزهر كان طريقتنا أصلحها والخير في الجميع. Allah'a şükür olsun.
We are thankful to Allah Almighty.
Mübarek bir yere gittik.
We have went to a sacred place.
Allah Azze ve Celle bereket vermiş.
And we went to a sacred place, a sacred land, which has been blessed by Allah Almighty's blessings.
Mısır Mısır inşallah aminin Kur'an'da da zikroluyor.
The land of Egypt is a blessed land which has also been mentioned in the Holy Quran.
Çok büyük evliyalar.
There are many awliya.
Peygamber Efendimizin torunları.
There are many members of the family of our beloved Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him. They are the grandchildren of our Prophet, peace be upon him.
Ehl-i Beyti çok var orada. Başta Hazreti Hüseyin.
There are many members of the family of our beloved Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him. There are many who belong to his household. First and foremost, there's Sayyidina Hussein. May Allah Almighty be pleased with him.
Hazreti Zeynep Hanım.
There's Sayyidatina Zainab. May Allah Almighty be pleased with them all.
Çok ulamadır, evliyadır. Oraya
there are many scholars and many awliya.
İlim için, irşad için gitmiş.
And all those holy people have went there in order to guide people towards the right way and to teach and spread knowledge or to seek knowledge.
Onların bereketi oluyor.
And one can experience and perceive the blessings of those holy people.
Evliyaların olduğu yerde bereket olur.
There's blessing in those places where the friends of Allah Almighty, the awliyaullah, are present.
Onların faydaları Allah'ın rahmeti daima.
They are the means for Allah Almighty's mercy to occur, and their presence is a blessing for their places.
Oralara onların üstlerine iner. Üstlerine enince de etraftakiler da
Allah Almighty's mercy descends upon His sacred holy people, and from them it spreads to their surroundings and to their environment and to the people living there.
Faydalanır.
And then everyone in that sacred environment will benefit from that.
Çoğu zaman insanlar halleri kötü olur.
Many times people are in a bad state.
Kabirde azapta olurlar.
And they may undergo suffering or torment in their graves.
Onların ansızın bakarsın rüyalarda görünür ki.
And you may hear and experience or witness the state people find themselves in their graves.
Bu adam azap çekiyor.
And you may witness in your dreams that a person who has died may be suffering or may undergo torment in his grave.
Sonra ona tövbe istiğfar ederler falan.
And then they may ask Allah Almighty for forgiveness of that deceased person's behalf.
Rüyada görünür ki o şeyden kurtulmuş, cennettedir.
And then they may see that person the second time in their dreams, and they may then witness that he has been relieved from his torment and is now in paradise.
Nasıl böyle şey yaptın derler.
And then in that dream they may ask that person, what has been the reason for you to be rescued from your torment and to be saved from your suffering?
Ve bizim kabristana bir salih kişi.
There was a good person, a good servant of Allah Almighty who came to visit the graveyard I'm buried in, the deceased person says.
Defne oldu. Onun hürmetine, şefaatine etraftakiler de şefaat nail olmuş.
That deceased person did not come to visit. That deceased the person, a good servant of Allah Almighty, died and was buried in that graveyard. And for the sake of that good person, of that good servant of Allah Almighty, we have all been released from our suffering.
Onların azapları da kalkmıştır.
And that person, that good servant of Allah Almighty, who has been buried in that graveyard, has been the mean for us to also be saved from our suffering, the person says.
Tebdil olmuş. Cennete tebdil olmuş.
That good servant of Allah Almighty that has been buried there has been the reason and the means for us to be also saved and to be allowed for entrance to paradise.
Rahatlamışlar yani o.
And with that good person of servant of Allah Almighty, with that awliyaullah that was buried in that graveyard, all others found peace.
Beldelerde ne kadar salih evliya varsa, Ehl-i Beyt sahabe olunca onların üzerine rahmet iner.
Therefore, the more good servants of Allah Almighty, the more awliyaullah are in places, the more blessings and the more mercy of Allah Almighty will descend onto that place and spread onto that place.
Oradaki hem ölüler faydalanır hem diriler faydalanır.
And they will be the benefit, they will be the reason to obtain benefit in the mercy of Allah Almighty, not only for the living but also for the dead.
Yani bu insanların bilmedikleri, çoğu insanların
This is a matter people have no knowledge of or are unaware of.
Bunu kabul etmedikleri
and people do not accept this matter.
Olur. Müslüman da şimdi bu yeni tayfa çıkmış kabul etmiyor.
And now there are also new groups and new sects of Muslims who do not accept this matter.
Zaten Müslüman olmayanlar, onlar artık hiçbir şey kabul etmiyorlar.
And those who are not Muslims, they do not accept anything at all.
Onlar kendi bereketsiz olarak
they live a life without blessing, without fulfillment.
Yaşayıp gidiyorlar.
They live for nothing, without any purpose or spiritual fulfillment.
Ne için yaşıyoruz diye.
They do not know and wonder why they live.
Çoğu zaman sıkıntıya düşüp.
And they are in a state of stress because they have no meaning or purpose of life.
Hayatları sıkıntı içinde.
Thus they waste their lives in stress and under stress and torment.
Darlık içinde geçer.
And they feel being narrowed down in their existence.
Yani darlık dediğimiz dünya darlığı değil, dünyalar onlarda var.
They feel narrowed down, they feel boxed in this life. And the reason why they feel this
olmayan insanlarda dünyalık en çok onlarda.
They are not Muslims, yet but they are in a state of feeling narrowed down, not because they do not have wealth, not because they do not have prosperity. No, they have the wealth of this world.
Bizim gittiğimiz yerlerde dünyalık yok, fakirlik var tabii.
But in those sacred lands which we have just recently visited, we have seen people who are not wealthy but which live in a state of poverty.
Fakirlik var ama gönül zenginliği var.
They are poor but they are rich and they have wealth in their hearts.
İman zenginliği var.
They have the riches and the wealth of having faith.
Dünyalı olup da Allah yolunda gitmeyen, Allah'a karşı olanlar muhakkak sıkıntıdadırlar.
Those who have wealth but do not follow the way of Allah Almighty are certainly in a state of distress.
Allah Azze ve Celle Kur'an'da aman a'ran zikri fenne lehu me'aşetan danka diyor. Benim yolumdan uzaklaşan onun hayatı sıkıntıda olur.
And Allah Almighty mentions in the Holy Quran that those who alienate themselves and those who distance themselves from following the way of Allah Almighty will undergo distress.
Stres de olur. Her türlü kötülük var.
Those who do not follow and distance themselves from the way of Allah Almighty will undergo all kinds of affliction.
Olur onda. Allah yolunda gidenler muhakkak saadete kavuşur inşallah.
Those who follow the way of Allah Almighty, however, they will certainly obtain bliss, satisfaction and peace.
Dünyada da ahirette de.
And they will be happy in this world as well as in the hereafter.
Yani dünya fakir olsa da az bir şeyden Allah'ın verdiği nimetten mutlu olur.
Even if they have only a little in this world, this little will suffice to make them happy and to be thankful.
Sevinir, Allah'a şükreder.
And they will be happy about the little they have, and they will thank Allah Almighty for it.
Öteki türlü ne kadar versen gene kızar, gene şeye karşı gelir.
But if a person is not grateful and thankful to Allah Almighty, no matter how much you give him, he will always complain, always fight, and always ask for more.
Herkese karşı gelmeye ister, hükümet eder.
No matter what you give him, a person who is not thankful to Allah Almighty will always oppose and complain about everything, about the government,
Başındakilerine de
about those who lead him,
doymaz.
and he will never be satisfied.
Daha fazla ister ki
He will always crave more,
daha fazla mutluluk olur zanneder.
and he thinks that by always asking and constantly asking for more, that he will actually become happy.
Çünkü mutluluğu Allah yolunda olan
But happiness resides in following the way of Allah Almighty.
bulmuştur.
Those who follow the way of Allah Almighty have found true happiness.
Allah sabit kadem kılsın hepimizi.
May Allah Almighty make us be steadfast in following the way of Allah Almighty,
Dünya ahiret saadet olsun.
so that we may obtain happiness in this world as well as in the